We're going to be in Genesis, mostly 42, but I'm going to start off with a few verses of 41 and end with a few verses out of 43. We're looking at Joseph, and last week we saw him promoted by Pharaoh. Today we're going to see the last little bit of that, but then we're going to see his brothers end up in Egypt. Excuse me. And end up fulfilling the very dream that caused them to want him dead. So Lord, I pray right now that you would give me your word to speak, and that I would only give what you have for me to give. That Lord, you'd open all of our hearts to hear your word. That the message today would be a blessing to everyone hearing it. In Christ's name I pray. Amen. So, then Pharaoh took his signet ring off his hand and put it on Joseph's hand. And he clothed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. And he had him ride in the second chariot which he had, and they cried out before him, "Bow the knee." And so he set him over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh also said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, and without your consent no man may lift his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt." So if last week when Pharaoh told him that you'll be second to no one but me, and I will only be over you from the throne, if that didn't give us an idea of how much power and trust Pharaoh was putting in Joseph's hands, he says, nobody here can even lift a hand without your say-so. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath-Paaneah, and he gave him as a wife Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. He lived in the city of Heliopolis, which is what we call it today, I guess. But back then it was dedicated to Ra. It was Egypt's sun god. And so Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt, and Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. So he's been promoted over all of Egypt. Pharaoh only outranks him because he's Pharaoh. But even then, Pharaoh's going to check with Joseph on a lot of the stuff that he does. He gives him an Egyptian name, puts fine linens on him, gold jewelry, presents him before the people, commands the people to bow before him, and gives him a high-ranking Egyptian wife. This is very much a political marriage, most likely. And she was the daughter of a high-ranking priest in their faith. So it kind of puts him up there to say, hey, this guy's important. His wife's important. The name that he's given, Zaphnath-Paaneah, means treasury of the glorious rest. Because Joseph trusted in God and was able to interpret the Pharaoh's dreams, Pharaoh has rest. Pharaoh can trust in Joseph that Joseph is trusting in God, that Joseph is following after the wisdom of God. And his wife, Asenath, her name means belonging to the goddess Neith. Now, as we'll see throughout Israel's history going forwards, they're going to intermarry with the people of the areas, and they're going to start following after their religions, their gods. Even King Solomon, the man who's supposed to be the most wise one out there, fell into the same trap. We don't see any mention of that here or going forwards coming out of Joseph. So Joseph here, he's not perfect. None of us are. But he is a pretty great guy. And we see that he was 30 years old at this point. 30 years old, and he's in charge of, at that point, the greatest nation on earth. It's the greatest nation any of them know about. And he is the boss of it, second only to Pharaoh. And we can look at that and say, wow, that went pretty quick. When I'm 39 and I'm the boss of, well, no nations. We don't even allow you to be president of America until you're 35. And we've never even done that. Our youngest, I think, was 50. Maybe late 40s, I don't know. So he's 30 years old, and that's amazingly quick to be in that position. But we also have to look at how he got there. He spent 13 years as a slave, as a prisoner. He spent all the time before that, while he was free, his brothers hated him. So in the middle of it, it probably didn't feel all that quick. It probably felt, man, this is dragging, and life's not going well. But he maintained his faith. And even then, we could look and say, well, yeah, but 13 years to suffer and go through stuff, to then be placed over in that high of a position, exalted that high, we might say, well, yeah, it's worth it, because, look where you got to. But I guarantee you, he wasn't expecting to be quite that high. While he's going through it all, he probably figured, well, God said they're going to bow to me, so I'm going to get the inheritance, and my brothers will bow before me. He probably didn't expect that he's going to get the inheritance of Egypt. So when we're going through a hard time, when we're going through something, we don't know if God's going to put us way up here, or if he's just going to get us through it. But we need to have patience and faith that no matter how long it takes, God is working, God will make it happen. We may never see ourselves exalted, but he's going to get us through whatever we have to go through. So now in the 7 plentiful years, the ground brought forth abundantly. So we gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities. He laid up in every city the food of the fields which surrounded them. And Joseph gathered very much grain as the land of the sea, until he stopped counting, for it was immeasurable. He knew to save, to put stuff aside, when they probably said, hey, we got abundance here. When I get extra money in my pocket, I have a tendency to say, well, I got some extra. What can I blow it on? When they're going through the abundance, their natural tendency probably would have been, hey, what can we do? Who can we sell this to? What can we do to get more money to get something out of this? But thanks to God's interpretation of Pharaoh's dream, Joseph knew, no, take all this extra, let's put that aside, let's save that. And they saved so much he couldn't even count it anymore. That could be kind of a lesson for us. When God gives me abundantly, when God gives me extra, maybe I need to set that aside for a rainy day or for a time when somebody else might need assistance. Maybe it doesn't need to go into whatever dumb thing I decided it needs to go into. And so to Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore to him. You notice her dad's name is kind of similar to Joseph's former boss, Potiphar. Not the same guy, just similar. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for God has made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the name of the second he called Ephraim, for God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. His time in slavery, his time in prison, his time being abused by his brothers, those are painful memories. There are things that he probably wishes he didn't have to go through. But he's been blessed so greatly by God, it's not weighing him down. He's not having to sit there and just be depressed over it. He's forgotten how much pain he went through. He's able to recognize that God's blessing is on him, and God has made him fruitful. God has gotten him through the hard time. God has made it so that the hard time isn't dragging him down and weighing him down. He's still able to be joyful. We're called to rejoice in all things. And that's not always easy. In fact, when things aren't going our way, it's never easy. But that's what we're called to do. We're called even when my truck breaks down, yeah, I got a chance to go and support a local business, to maybe share the gospel with them. You never know what opportunities God's going to put up for you. My truck's had a check engine light for the knock sensor for the past month and a half, 2 months. I've got all the parts to do it. I was planning on, just going outside and doing it. And I don't have time. And now it's hot, so I have even less time because I make excuses when it's hot outside. So I'm taking it into to a mechanic on Tuesday. But I like these guys. They're trustworthy, and I feel like, hey, at least if I'm going to give somebody money, then A, I know that they're doing it right, and B, I'm not doing it. But also I know that it's going to a good person. It's a good mechanic in town. We notice that one thing Joseph does here, by saying God has caused me to be fruitful, God has allowed me to forget, has caused me to forget. He's not naming his kids, I've worked hard and now I'm blessed. He's naming his kids to show that he's not taking credit. He's not saying, yeah, I'm so smart, I got here. God blessed me, God made this happen. Then the 7 years of plenty, which were in the land of Egypt, ended, and the 7 years of famine began to come, as Joseph had said. The famine was in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. So when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. And the Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, go to Joseph. Whatever he says to you, do. The famine was over all the face of the earth. Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians. And the famine became severe in the land of Egypt. So all countries came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain, because the famine was severe in all lands. Pharaoh reiterates the fact, whatever you need, Joseph's the boss. You can't do anything unless you talk to Joseph. Joseph is leading this place. I'm just in charge. They came to Pharaoh and said, hey, Pharaoh, we're hungry. You need to help us. He says, talk to Joseph. I told you already. So when Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, why do you look at one another? And he said, indeed, I have heard that there's grain in Egypt. Go down to that place and buy for us there, that we may live and not die. I picture Jacob looking at his sons, and they're sitting around like, man, I'm hungry. What am I going to do? It's getting bad. Just quit looking at each other and go get some bread from Egypt. It's the only way I can interpret that. Why do you look at one another? Go to Egypt. And so Joseph's 10 brothers went to buy grain in Egypt, but Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he said, lest some calamity befall him. The last time one of Rachel's sons went with you guys, he didn't come back. And the sons of Israel went to buy grain among those who journeyed, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. So now Joseph was governor over the land, and it was he who sold all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the earth. So Jacob, he was scared to lose Benjamin. Like I said, last time one of Rachel's sons went with them, he didn't come back. And Benjamin is all he has left of Rachel, his favorite wife. I think he's a little bit suspicious of his other sons, that maybe they had something to do with this. But we see they go into Egypt, and they're now bowing before Joseph. He had the dream. He told them, the 10 sheaves bowed before me, or all the sheaves bowed before me. And now here we see, bowed before him. They didn't like that dream, and so they wanted to kill him. They had mercy on him. Judah convinced him to have mercy by saying, let's just chuck him in a hole and not actually kill him. And then the other said, you know what? Let's sell him to them so at least we get something out of this. They tried to stop the fulfillment of that dream. They said, if he's gone, then how are we going to battle him, huh? And we see God said, this is how. You're going to try and make things bad. I'm going to turn it around and put him in a spot where you're going to have to bow before him. And you don't even know it at the time. As I've pointed out before, Joseph oftentimes is used as a depiction of Jesus in the Old Testament. And we also know Satan came out trying to put an end to Jesus. He knew that the seed of Mary was going to be the one to crush his head. He says, well, I'm not going to have that. There is a seed. If I kill him, he can't crush my head. And so he conspired and he got Jesus crucified on the cross. And just like them selling Joseph off led to the salvation of Israel, led to their people being saved, the people of Egypt being saved, Satan's scheming led to all of us being saved. It led to the fulfillment of God's plan, bringing out salvation. And God sets forth his plan and what he wants to happen. It doesn't matter who tries to stop him. His plan's going to happen. So Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he acted as a stranger to them and spoke roughly to them. And he said to them, where do you come from? They said, from the land of Canaan to buy food. And so Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. Then he remembered the dreams which he had dreamed about them and said to them, you're spies. You've come to see the nakedness of the land. And they said, no, my lord, but your servants have come to buy food. We are all one man's sons. We are honest men. Your servants are not spies. We said, no, you've come to spy out the nakedness of the land. He meets his brothers. This is where we see he's not quite a perfect guy. And he takes this opportunity to torment them, to hassle them, to give them a hard time, make them scared. And he notices that there's only 10 of them. He kind of wonders what was number 11. So he accuses them of being spies who are coming in to see the weak points so they can try and steal what Egypt has saved. He knows better. But like I said, he sees his opportunity. You guys tormented me something terrible. I'm going to get just a little bit back. And they said, your servants are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And in fact, the youngest is with our father today, and one is no more. Well, you're speaking to the one. But Joseph said to them, it is as I spoke to you, saying, you are spies. In this manner you shall be tested. By the life of Pharaoh you shall not leave this place, unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you, and let him bring your brother, and you shall be kept in prison, that your words may be tested to see whether there is any truth in you. Or else, by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies. So he put them all in prison together for 3 days. And Joseph is worried that maybe they took out Benjamin too, because he knows that Benjamin most likely would go on to be the favorite after he was gone. So he wants proof that Benjamin is still all right, that he's still around. And Joseph said to them on the 3rd day, do this and live, for I fear God. You notice it's capital G God. He says, I fear God, your God, the God of Abraham. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers be confined to your prison house, but you go and carry grain for the famine of your houses. Bring your youngest brother to me, so your words will be verified, and you shall not die. And they did so. So originally he said, I'm going to keep all of you. One of you goes back and bring Benjamin. But after 3 days, he says, he has mercy. He says, maybe they came here because of the famine, they need food. Let me send them back with food, I'll just keep one of them. He doesn't want his gain here to cause their families back in Canaan to die. So he loads them up with food so they can go back, save everyone, and bring Benjamin. And they said to one another, we are truly guilty concerning our brother, for we saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us, and we would not hear. Therefore, this distress has come upon us. They say, whenever you see therefore, you should see what it's there for. They're saying, because we were so evil to Joseph, That's why we're in trouble now. And they know that that is the truth. They know that the reason that they're being tormented, the reason they're falling into troubles now is because of what they did to Joseph. They just don't know that it's Joseph right there who's doing it. Reuben answered them, saying, Did I not speak to you, saying, Do not sin against the boy? And you wouldn't listen? Therefore, behold, his blood is now required of us. They didn't know that Joseph understood them, for he spoke to them through an interpreter. Now, I don't know if it was over time they realized that they had done wrong and they repented before, but now they're seeing fully the consequences on their heads, or if like just this moment they're like, we didn't do anything wrong, but we're being accused of wrong and tossed in a prison, just like we tossed our brother who did nothing wrong in a hole. And if they figured it out now, if they figured it out before, but in either case, they figured it out. They figured out that what they did was wrong, and now they're being punished. And they're repentant. Reuben's got a little bit of revisionist history here. He says, I told you don't sin against him. No, he said, just abandon him in a hole. That's not really any better. In fact, that's probably worse, because his plan, as far as they knew, was just leave him in a hole so he could starve to death. Mind you, his plan was to come back and rescue him, but he didn't tell them that. He didn't stand up and say, let's not kill him, let's bring him back home, this is wrong, guys. He said, we'll just leave him in the hole, and that's better. Wrong page. There we go. Now, Joseph, of course, still knows Hebrew, and he spent 17 years speaking it. He knows what they're saying, but he's being sneaky, he's being tricky, and he's speaking Egyptian through an interpreter to them to make it even more difficult for them to figure out who he is. But Joseph, as I said, he's a great guy, and he's got a soft heart, which is why he's showing them mercy now. And he turned away from them, and he wept. And he returned to them again and talked with them. He took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. He's moved by their sincerity. He hears what they're saying. He knows that they mean it, because as far as they know, he has no clue what they're saying. So they're not trying to trick him or trying to impress him with anything. He knows that they're truthful, and he's moved by it, and he weeps. He's sad. He's playing the tough guy here by speaking roughly to them, but that's not remotely who he is. When people think that no one's going to find out, that's when you find out their true heart, their true motives. Now, rabbinic tradition, rabbis throughout history have said that they believe that it was Simeon who bound Joseph and tossed him in the pit. We don't see that in the Bible anywhere, but if true, a little bit of poetic justice and explains why he would choose Simeon from among them. But we do know this much at least, that Simeon himself is indeed cruel. He's not a nice fellow. Jacob, when he blesses everybody else, curses Simeon for his cruelty. So then Joseph gave a command to fill their sacks with grain, and to restore every man's money to his sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. Thus he did for them. So they loaded their donkeys with the grain and departed from there. But as one of them opened his sack to give his donkey feed at the encampment, he saw his money, and there it was in the mouth of his sack. And so he said to his brothers, my money has been restored, and there it is in my sack. Then their hearts failed them, and they were afraid, saying to one another, what is it that God has done to us? Joseph decides to be nice and give them their money back. Still kind of messing with them a little bit, because if he's being mean to them this whole time, and all of a sudden their money's back, the natural assumption is, we're in trouble. Since their hearts failed them, they grew faint, they got weak. They said, it affected them because they were like, this guy, we got to go back for our brother at some point here. And when we do, he's going to say, you guys stole all that grain from us. Now you're in jail. So then they went home. It says they went to Jacob their father in the land of Canaan and told him all that had happened to them, saying, I'm not going to read through the whole story again. We're going to skip those few verses. But he basically repeated what we just read. It says, then it happened as they emptied their sacks that surprisingly each man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. So now it's not just one guy who stole the grain, they've all stolen the grain. Or so they think. And Jacob their father said to them, you have bereaved me. Joseph is no more, Simeon is no more, and you want to take Benjamin. All of these things are against me. You know, I love Jacob's faithfulness. And Reuben spoke to his father, saying, kill my 2 sons if I don't bring them back to you. Put them in my hands, and I'll bring them back to you. But he said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. If any calamity should befall him along the way in which you go, then you would bring down my gray hair as sorrow to the grave. So we've got Jacob. And you notice, he's Jacob again. He's not Israel right now, he's Jacob. Whenever Jacob is being dumb, he's Jacob. When he's showing great faith, when he's doing what he's supposed to, he's Israel. And I just love it. He says, you know, Joseph's dead, Simeon's dead. Well, Simeon's not dead. He's just in jail waiting for you to send Benjamin back. And you want to take Benjamin? No, if anything happens to him, I'm going to die. I'm going to die of sadness. I'm going to die of despair. And the rest of his sons are like, what? Forget us, I guess. What are we, chopped liver? You lose Benjamin, you're going to die, but you just called Simeon dead, and you didn't even care. He hasn't learned from what happened to Joseph. He hasn't learned that you got to love your kids, all of them, even if they're jerks, like a lot of his kids are. You can't be showing favoritism because bad things happen. Pastor Chuck wrote, his despair shows his lack of faith. He says, faith hopes for the best. Despair expects the worst. So here we see Simeon is just in jail, waiting for Benjamin to go back and prove that Benjamin still is alive. And Benjamin and his sons have said, we're not going to kill him. Nothing bad's going to happen. We're going to take care of him. We'll watch out for him. But what does Jacob say? No, if anything happens, I'll die. He's in despair. He's expecting the worst. He's not showing any faith. He got his eyes off of God and onto the problem. We know, Jacob should know by now. All the ways, all the times that God has been there in his life, all the times that God has done great things in his life, in his journey, and taken care of him. I can look at my life, I can look at other people around me and the ways God has provided for them, and I know, no matter what's going on, God has got control of this. If I keep my eyes on God, if I'm looking at him, when I go through troubles, when I go through things that should make me despair, I can keep my faith, I can keep my hope. Jacob got his eyes off of God, he got his eyes onto the problems. If we look just at the world, it could cause us to have despair. We see it right here. If I look at the world today and I say, all the things that are going wrong, all the political things, all the things going on, all the things that just are bad, that go against what God would want, all the wars, all the rumors of wars, every day I hear about it from the radio station that my boss listens to. Oh, North Korea is going to launch a nuke and start a nuclear war, and then Russia and China will back them against us. And oh no, wait, no, Russia's going to drop nukes on the Ukraine, and then we're going to have to respond. Oh no, this is going. If I paid attention to that, I'd be terrified. Nuclear holocaust is going to happen at some point, somehow. It's coming. Okay, well maybe it will. Maybe all those guys are right with their predictions of how it's going to happen. I don't know. But you know what? If I keep my eyes on God, if I don't look at that, if I say, you know what, God's got control. I can have peace. I can have calm. And similarly, if we look just at our situations, it causes despair. When I was driving truck over the road, and my boss said, hey, I got to shut down. I'm not making any money. And I was like, well, as much as I love driving truck, I hate being away from my family. And I came home without a new job lined up, without a huge amount of savings, because if I made decent money driving truck, that extra money went into feeding myself on the road because I don't have a kitchen on the truck. And if I just looked at my situation, I could have said, I'm going to lose the house. I'm going to lose the car. We're going to be in poverty here. Nothing good's coming out of this. But instead, God sent me a check from my college that I went to 3 years prior to that. A refund of a portion of my Pell Grant that gave us exactly a month and a half of living expenses. And that's exactly how long it took me to get my first paycheck at the new job that I went and got. If I looked at my situation, I would have been in despair. But that wasn't the first time I've been in a spot because of driving a truck. And God got me through that too. So when we go through rough times, when we go through things that should make us despair, I can rejoice in that and say, you know what? I don't know why I'm going through this except for one thing. The next time I go through this, I'll have already been through it and seen how God provided, and I won't have to be scared. So I can be happy I'm going through this, knowing that I won't be scared next time. Yeah, I can find a way to be happy about anything. Almost. But if we keep our faith in God, if we keep our eyes on God, we don't see the things around us. We don't see the problems. It's one of the reasons why I'm not too worried about extraneous noises in here. Or sometimes people will bring a baby in and they feel bad. Oh, the baby's crying. I gotta step outside. No, keep them. Will it be somewhat distracting in worship or during the service? Maybe. But you know what? If we're focused in on God and on worship and on hearing His word, who cares? I've learned to tune things out. And we just need to focus. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 18 tells us, while we do not look at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporary. The things which are not seen are eternal. If we look at what's seen, that's our physical world, everything around us, it's temporary. As Pastor Chuck used to always say, it's all going to burn. It's all going to burn. If I'm worried about getting a scratch on my truck, and I allow that to make me mad and sin and cuss somebody out, well, I just put that thing over them. And if they happen to know that I'm a Christian, and they're not, then if I try to share the gospel with them, well, they're going to say, no, you're a jerk. If God made you that jerk, or if God couldn't stop you from being that jerk, why do I want to talk to that guy? My truck's going to burn someday. The things which are not seen, the unseen things, are the things that are eternal. God is eternal. Our salvation, our spirits, our soul, that's eternal. The angels. Don't look at the things around us, but look at what God is doing in our lives. Jacob's got his eyes only on the world, only on what could go wrong. He says, Simeon's dead. Simeon is no more. Simeon is only no more if you refuse to send Benjamin back. If you let your fear keep you from sending Benjamin, then yeah, as far as you guys all are aware, then Simeon will be dead. You notice he has a choice. He has some say in the matter. He can choose to have faith in God. He can choose to say, you know what? God is going to watch out for me. God is going to handle this. I'll send Benjamin. And then thusly saving his son Simeon. But then we see Reuben. Reuben's the eldest. Reuben has had his own share of mistakes throughout the history. But he steps up here for a moment. He says, I take responsibility. You send Benjamin, I'll make sure he comes back. And if I don't bring him back, kill me. Kill my kids. Don't kill me. He goes halfway. It's his history. Instead of stepping up and saying, hey, let's not do wrong to Joseph, guys, pull him up out the pit. He says, hey, guys, let's just leave him in the pit so I can sneak back and get him later. If he had stood up and said, no, we're not doing this, and pulled him up out of the pit, then he wouldn't have gotten sold. He wouldn't have been in that position. But as we know, God uses all things. And God used that as part of his will, part of his plan to bring about the salvation of Israel, to bring about everything going forwards. And if Israel doesn't survive, if Israel doesn't get through this famine, then Messiah doesn't come out. So now, moving on to chapter 43. The famine was severe in the land, and it came to pass, when they'd eaten up the grain which they had brought from Egypt, that their father said to them, go back and buy us a little food. Now, I read that and I said, wait. They came back. They've eaten all the food that they brought. How long has poor Simeon been rotting in prison here? They've eaten all the food, and Jacob basically said, forget Simeon, he's no more. If I say he's no more, I don't have to worry about sending Benjamin. We'll just eat the food and we'll go back and buy more later. Well, now it's later. Go back and buy more food. But Judah spoke to him, saying, the man solemnly warned us, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you send our brother with us, we will go down and buy you food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. Judah steps up. He's showing leadership qualities. He's saying, no, listen, here's the deal. This is how it has to be. Otherwise, we're not doing it. We're not going to waste our time and potentially our lives because you're scared. So either do it right or we're not doing it at all. This is a big change from when we saw him in chapter 38 and how he messed over Tamar. Like I said, the events of chapter 38 where Tamar basically called him out in front of everyone and said, no, this is he was wrong. He did this. That was a humbling moment. That was a moment where God broke him. And after he was broken, God could turn him around, and now he can actually be used. And here he is. There's a reason why Judah is the line where the kings came from, is the line where Jesus came from. Because Judah was broken before the Lord, and now is stepping up and actually being a leader. So Israel said, notice he's Israel again. Why did you deal so wrongly with me? Is to tell the man whether you still had another brother. He's still acting a little bit dumb, but he's coming around. But they said, the man asked us pointedly about ourselves and our family, saying, is your father still alive? Have you another brother? And we told him, according to these words, could we have possibly known that he would say, bring your brother down? Then Judah said to Israel, his father, send the lad with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you and also our little ones. Now he's saying, this isn't just about you, Dad. This is about you. This is about us. This is about our kids. You're worried about your son. What about my sons? What about my kids? Send him with us so that we may live and not die. And he goes on and says, if I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. For if we had not lingered, surely by now we would have returned the second time. He takes responsibility directly on himself. If we don't bring him back, it's my fault. You can blame me. And he points out just a little bit of logic for him too. If we hadn't been sitting here dilly-dallying, if we hadn't been waiting, we could all have been back with more food. We wouldn't be hungry right now. But you got scared. My father Israel said to them, if it must be so, then do this. Take some of the best fruits of the land in your vessels and carry down a present for the man, a little balm and a little honey, spices and myrrh, pistachio nuts and almonds. Take double money in your hand, and take back in your hand the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. Take your brother also and arise, go back to the man. And may God Almighty give you mercy before the man, that he may release your other brother in Benjamin. If I am bereaved, I am bereaved. So he comes back around. Finally, Israel shows his face again. He says, you know what, guys? Fine, here's the deal. Take him a gift. Apologize for stealing your money back last time. Take extra money to give to him, plus the money from last time. Maybe it was all just a mistake. Maybe it was just an oversight. Maybe he wasn't doing it to try and trap you and kill you all. Maybe God is in control and has got a plan. Take your brother too and go back. And then he says, the very last verse here, most important, may God Almighty give you mercy. If I'm bereaved, I am bereaved. He finally just puts it in God's hands. He says, God is the one that's going to have to show you mercy. Because no matter what this guy thinks of you, no matter what this guy wants to do, if God shows you mercy, then I'm okay. If God lets it happen, then I'm okay. If I'm bereaved, I'm bereaved. You know, I made it through the loss of Joseph. I said I was going to die then. I obviously didn't. If you lose Benjamin, so be it. I'll survive that too. And I'm submitting myself to God's plan. That's the spot that we all need to be in. If I get called by God to do something, if I know this is the right thing for me to do, but it's a difficult thing, it's a scary thing, it's a thing I don't want to do, then I need to say, if I'm bereaved, I'm bereaved. If this is hard, this is hard. May God have mercy on me. We need to recognize that just like Jacob did here, just like Israel did here, it's not in my hands, it's not in his hands, it's in God's hands. We need to trust God to work things for us. And that's that. Lord, I thank you right now for your word and for your encouragement. I thank you, Lord, that you are with us in the good times and in the bad times, and that, Lord, you have a plan through all of them. I thank you, Lord, that we serve a God who is powerful enough to turn around a tragedy, powerful enough to turn around a terrible situation and turn it into glory, turn it into good. Lord, I pray that you would keep that on our hearts. Lord, help us to remember at all times that you are God. And that we would keep our eyes on you and keep our faith in you. That we wouldn't be distracted to the left or the right by the things happening in this world, that we would only be looking at you and what you're doing and what you're capable of doing and what you're going to do. Lord, I pray a hedge of protection around us as we go out this week. For those of us that are traveling, that, Lord, you would protect us on the roads. Those of us going into work, that, Lord, you would help us to be a light before the people that we interact with every day. Just, Lord, that we be a light to really anybody we interact with, at work, at the store, here at church, wherever we go, Lord, that we would draw people to you. In Christ's name we pray.